And Robert Gant is with us as well. Robert, hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Wonderful. How did you come to this place?
First of all, I just want to say my favorite thing in the world is to hear these people's voices. I got to tell you,
yeah, it's great.
Is like family. It just warms my heart. It's the most amazing thing. I came out here. I was from Tampa. I kind of actually was on a law track very briefly and left it and started doing the acting thing. And I was bouncing around doing mostly sitcom stuff. And of course, I came on and the show was already a big hit. These guys had been busting their asses for the first season, and it was just the talk of the town. And I remember an actor friend saying to me one time that you'll just I was saying, I need to get that part. I just want to get that right thing. And he said, it'll the right one all of a sudden will come across your desk and it'll all line up. And I remember getting the fax information on this role, and just the description was such that I completely had that moment where it was kind of scary, sort of terrifying, because I was still largely closeted, as an actor, and yet I had that feeling that I've never read a role that felt more right for me, or like my role, and so I went through a very long, drawn out process. They had some issues with the kind of the guy that had gone before, and they were really careful about replacing, finding Michael's next partner, and so I think I went in like 4 or 5 times auditioning here in Los Angeles, and I finally actually, they said I was their pick, but they just weren't sure, and so I did what I had never done before. I wrote a long, sort of impassioned letter to let them know what it meant to me, and then the next day or two they said, I said, what? I got the call that, well, we have good news and bad news. You're going to go meet for the part, but you don't have it yet. You have to pack as if you're going to, in case you get it. So they flew me to Toronto. I didn't know if I had it or not, and I had to meet with them and meet with Hal, and so I went, and it was amazing.
One of the things that I loved, Scott, when you came on the show the first time, was when you told me how you guys really did become a real family, and that you are still very close and a real family.
Yeah.
For 10 years. I mean, that's really important, right? I think our tribes in this town are one of the most important things about being here.
Tribes, yeah.
And to form a tribe that you can rely on, of friends that you can call, that is still strong 10 years later, that all of you are still in 10 years later. I think that's totally beautiful, and I think that's one of the things that makes the what's gone after the show has been canceled so special to fans, is that you are...
I agree. It keeps going. It's not something, any of us can fake, I don't think. We're not that good of actors. And, it was... and it's
wait a minute.
Well, Sharon
was nominated for another Emmy.
The multi-Emmy award winning
Sharon Emmy Glass.
She despises us all in real life, and she deigns to give us her presence.
Can I
she just stepped on Scott's head to get on my internet radio show. I know what she's
exactly.
like.
I really feel as though Scott, though, is the glue that kind of
I do
holds it together.
Yeah,
I mean, I think everyone, plays their part, but Scott really, there's something about him, he just holds it together, for me anyway. I don't know. You bring us together a lot.
Thank you.
Scott is definitely Julie the cruise director.
Yeah, I mean, he brought us together today. He brought us together
and so
today.
Quickly. He just had an idea, and this was all Scott's idea for everybody listening. Scott was going to come hang out with me again to celebrate my 2-year anniversary month. And he put this whole thing together, and you guys all did it, which just blew me away and took time out of your schedule.
Scott is one of the sweetest men I've ever met. He kind of restores your faith.
Thank you. I'm blushing. I'm blushing through the airwaves. But it's also, it's also what I think what made the show unique, and something that again just bled through with the show, that we were a family, and that we were able to push each other and do things on the show that I don't think it would have been quite as successful had we not been the family we were.
Right.
And you can see it. I mean, maybe I can, or maybe people who are are actors who have been on other shows. When you watch shows and you can tell the cast doesn't really get along. Sure. You can kind of feel it, and there's something there that's kind of dry about it, and we were moist.
We were wet.
Wow. Gross. That's disgusting, Scott.
Sorry.
were all plucked out of our lives. Most of us. I mean, Taylor was the only one living in Canada at the time, and the rest of us were all sort of grabbed from New York or LA and given a week or two to pack up our lives and plopped into Toronto to shoot this series. So we were really dependent on each other that first season. We needed each other to survive, and I think that paid extraordinary dividends. And then we went through 9/11 together.
Yeah.
I mean, we were shooting. I still remember
I
the
remember
scene we were
that.
shooting.
Yep, I do too. I do too.
I remember that day.
I
so
remember that
clearly.
day so well. It wasn't at your apartment, Scott, where
Yeah.
everybody got together.
Yeah.
Yep. After
It was such a sad, shocking day. We were all away from home, and remember, I went to the Red Cross to try and give blood, and they turned me down.
Right. Well, because you drink so much.
But to have your apartment close to, and there was the whole cast, all just huddled together.
Yeah, and we lived through. Do you remember the night that Bush stole the election, or maybe I shouldn't say anything too inflammatory.
Oh, Michelle, tell us what you really think.
Well, I mean, that night, I just remember that night so clearly because
Yeah.
the next day was my birthday. My birthday
Yeah.
always falls around election time. And I remember I don't know, there was a cake involved. And I just remember that next day, it was a huge event in American history when our country shifted and you thought, oh, that can happen.
Yeah.
And we lived through that together. And we lived through so many breakups. I remember I think all of us almost lost our relationship that first year because of the demands of being on the road and all of that.
Yeah.
As an actor, do you feel the effects of doing a show where the world is changing with you on the show? You know, the show was addressing a lot of political issues as our country was going through a lot.
Well,
do you realize that you're doing that and that people are watching your show sort of to see, well, what's Queer as Folk going to, how's they going to handle this? How are they going to handle gay marriage? How are they going to handle
honestly,
this issue?
I feel
gay
like
marriage wasn't in the.
I was going to say, and people on the phone chime in too, but I feel like we were ahead of the curve on a lot of stuff.
Dan and Ron were really. I mean, you have to credit them because I think we were bringing up gay marriage at a time when people weren't talking about it.
Right. It was a joke, and we're all going to go to Canada.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was
exactly. And so I think we were ahead of the
crystal
curve.
meth addiction stuff,
right?
And all that stuff I think was a little bit ahead of the curve somehow.
Right.
They were able to do that. Do you guys agree over there in Phone Land?
Peter, how about you?
All of us.
Peter, do you think that?
I was just sitting here thinking, when I'm really involved in a series, I almost don't know what's going on outside.
That's true.
Right.
I don't. I mean, I'm like just totally involved in doing our story.
Well, again, that's because you drink so much.
Yeah.
But we did. But you know what's interesting is that we did because I remember 4 years later when Kerry was running for president, and we got together and we went across the country and we were campaigning, and it did. There was there was something special always when politics and art collide. That there's a special feeling in the air always for me on the show that we were doing something that was more than television. That we were trying to really. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
Create a revolution, but of peace, you know, of love, of acceptance. And I just remember times when, like, we wrote that letter to the president of Showtime, or did you and Peter author it or something?
Yeah.
And we didn't want a frame changed.
Peter and I were the secretaries.
Yeah, they're the secretaries. And
Did we write a letter? What did we write a letter about?
Peter, remember, we wanted to make sure that they were going to change and water down the sex scenes, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't water it down because we wanted to
We
be.
wrote a letter about that?
Yes, I have it on file. Trust me,
we were
I'm the
worried-
historian of the group.
We had heard tell that early on, before the show started airing, that Showtime had made a decision to go through the ratings board to get a rating for the show, because at this point in time, I don't think anything above an R-rated show could be broadcast, and they felt like, if we were to get rated, we would get rated NC-17 or X with some of the things we were doing.
And then they would put you
show.
on at like 2 a.m.
Exactly. And we found out there was and so we were very upset by this, that they were going to go to the ratings board, and the ratings board would say, you can't put the show on the air, or it's at NC-17 or it's X or whatever. And so we wrote this very upset letter to the president of Showtime, saying that we put literally our asses out there, and we would be very upset if this were to happen. And what it turned out to be was that they were they wanted to show the members of their board and other people like that, and because the ratings board came back and said, this is a terrific show. Yes, it's NC-17. If you make any cuts in this, you will ruin the integrity of this show. Don't do it. And so they put it on the air without a rating and just did the mature rating on it.
But we were ready to fight for it.
But we were ready to fight for it, yeah, and all along the lines.
And I think for me that it was always, I don't know, kind of the spirit of the group. It's kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but when we all met and Taya threw this beautiful like welcoming party in Toronto because she had this home there, this beautiful home, and she invited us all into it, and we were all getting to know each other. And I remember that night so clearly, and it's kind of like meeting all your soulmates all at once.
Right.
And not having sex, but metaphically having sex. Like it was kind of like here's a big group
Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Clooney.
What? Did it become sexual just now? Sorry. But it's kind of like here's a large group for of people who are your soulmates and your kindred spirits, and you're all kind of rebels, and you want to do things that no one else or everyone else is afraid to do, and so that was special in that.
Yeah, I remember that when we were doing the shoot for the Time magazine.
Yeah.
And Macy Gray was playing, and we felt.
But I mean, honestly, don't you think? And all of you are very talented and wonderful actors, and let me say that. And I meet a lot of actors. Part of what made the show special was that there was no weak link. You were all so good, but also. Sometimes I think as actors we come to the point where we kind of step into our universal purpose that's more than just playing roles. It's also affecting the world and being a citizen of the universe and writing a letter when you think something shouldn't be cut, or campaigning for a candidate, or coming out and speaking. And that makes you even, it almost trumps the creativity. I mean, it doesn't really, but it's a whole different, ball of wax.
Yeah,
it's made life afterward an interesting thing as an artist, because it's really hard to compare when you get to do something you love and that it aligns with the notion that it is impacting the world in this way. I mean, how do you follow that up? It really kind of it's really tough to find that sort of a scenario.
Yeah, it's a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that you all are kind of spiritual soulmates makes it extra special, and makes the project extra special. And I think, like you said, the audience can feel that, Scott. People can tell when people hate each other.
Yeah, I can absolutely see it now. I mean, maybe it's just with the experience, but when I watch things, I can just kind of tell if they get
Name
along.
names.
Well,
this is the McCarthy.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that show Burn Notice on the USA? No.
Hey, that's a great show.
It's a great show. They're all wonderful.
But you kind of can. I mean, sometimes after you see the E! True Hollywood Story, you'll go back and watch the show from 40 years ago, and you're like, oh, I can kind of see that they
absolutely
kind of staring at each other.
Absolutely. You could see that Chachi didn't really love Joni.
Great, Scott. Now my whole day is ruined. For real?
That's right.
My bubbles burst.
Great.
Well, I think also because we all were from another country except for Taya, but I mean, we were all away from home. And I remember when I got my first apartment, I got it the year after you guys did. And Peter took me around to buy my furniture, and that was a bonding, and you guys came over and played cards, and
we bought Gail.
because I wasn't
help
stripping
Gail buy
down,
his
they
bed.
paid me to keep my clothes on.
Yeah.
So I did.
That's a shame, though.
Not season 4. Not season 4. I remember seeing some Shannon in season 4.